I think you should be all right. I think, like you said, this is such a weird time with Corona, and then obviously, I'll get your thoughts on George Floyd's death and the protests and the rioting in a second. But yeah, you're right, man. 2020 has just been a weird year overall. I think it started off, and I'm not saying this to be funny or as a joke or anything, but quite literally, this year started going downhill when Kobe died. Ever since that helicopter crash, nothing seems to have, like, I don't know if we went into like an alternate reality or something, and this is just like a weird, but nothing has been remotely the same. And you know what? I'd also say that some of the changes have been for the better, obviously, as we'll get into later. But with Corona, like, everything's going to change. The system's going to get upended. There's probably going to be more masks. I know gyms. I'll just use the gym example because I'm a big gym guy. Gyms are not going to be the same. I already know people that are going to kind of lobby for gyms using, it's like plexiglass. Same thing in barbershops. So you're right. It's definitely going to be radically different. But in these times, I think it's people that have the ability to kind of roll with the punches, have the passion to take whatever life throws at them, right? Because if you talk about working during this quarantine, like, I've been trying to, when I would usually right now probably be doing a podcast in person with someone, now we use Zoom in terms of, I guess, lobbying, right? You could say that a lot of lobbying and social and political movements have moved onto Instagram because nobody's allowed. I mean, people are gathering now, but we're seeing certain things change up. So, I mean, as long as you have the ideals and the work ethic to kind of hold on and be open to change and just kind of like flow through, then I think you should be fine. And I think that's something that you've always had. I mean, you got through college, I mean, it seems so, simple, but college in its own kind of way is curveball after curveball, So
Yeah. Even to just go back on like a lot of your different points that you made for that. I agree that 2020 obviously started off in quite a shock. I mean, only like 3 weeks in January to me, and I know you and I are both young people, so it's, we don't necessarily have like anything to base it off of because, we're both in our 20s now.
right.
We're both in our 20s now, and obviously have only been on the earth for roughly only 2 decades. But the only death that I think could compare to his, at least like in terms of shock and just everyone just being overwhelmingly like, wow, would be the death of Michael Jackson in 2009. It's like the only one that I remember having that much of a shock value. And, I was in like 4th or 5th grade at the time. So, not really that I could even conceptually understand as much what was going on then, because that was in 2009. So from the beginning and the onset, 2020 just had a crazy start. And, even though we were having the thoughts and kind of, we were hearing about coronavirus throughout February, and, we weren't sure what it really was, but it just seemed like this very contagious disease. All of a sudden for it to like hit the US hard at the beginning of March, I think was really just like, wow, like, just like what a crazy thing. But you're right, it has changed everything. Especially certain professions now, like you're saying, you would do podcasts more so in person, which honestly, I think that's, in-person contact is something that people need. And if there's anything that this pandemic has taught me, it's that. I haven't necessarily been able to see a lot of my home or college friends because of this, and it's definitely had more of a negative impact on me than it has positive. And I think that goes, a lot of people are in that same boat where they just want to see and be able to experience, just somewhat of normalcy with their friends,
Right.
because it really has, it's been since March that's been able to happen. So, I think that there's like, a lot of different factors that have played into just what like a chaotic and like crazy year that this has been. Obviously, some people are just experiencing corona fatigue. They don't want to bother listening to the warning signs or any of the potential threats. They at this point, some people just don't even think it's real. They don't want to get it. I personally don't believe that. I believe that it's a, scary, like, deadly thing, and that's still out there. And I believe that New York has done an excellent job of kind of containing it and maintaining it a lot better than some other states. But that does not take away from the fact that um, like it has changed everything from like the way we live and such. And I think you and I both would definitely prefer to be able to like do stuff in person, whether it be something like with a lobbying thing, which I think it's best when it's done in person,
Right.
um, for person contact, even anything with even the current protests going on. I can understand the desire for wanting to do that in person, because it's a totally other thing to just be sitting there and like, tweeting a hashtag from your phone than going out and actually marching in protest of something that you believe in. So it's a lot different outcome for sure.
Yeah, and to your point, I remember a lot of people. There's always two arguments you see with, I think it's called hacktivism or hashtag something I can't remember the name of it, but basically there's a big division in people being active and showing their support and starting movements on their phones, whereas in contrast to starting them in person and actually, like you said, physically being there. Would you say kind of I'm sure that there's got to be upsides and downsides to each caveats? You said that you're kind of more in favor of having them in person. Is there a specific reason for that? Is it just because I would argue, and let me just play devil's advocate for a second here.
Sure.
While you don't get, I'd assume, the same impact in terms of seeing results or progress, in terms of seeing someone's passion, right? Like, to me, if I'm the head of a corporation, let's just say, because some big budget corporations, I'm sure they could care less when it really comes down to it. I'd be more swayed by a riot, or I want to say a riot, but a protest outside of my building than one over Instagram. But one could say that also Instagram, the reach that you can achieve goes far greater, right? Like we saw it. We'll get into, again. I know I keep saying this. We'll get into George Floyd. I wanted to pick your brain as well, since you're a big politics guy, on
Sure.
the reactions online and in person. But I would say that, especially with the way our society is headed now, that Instagram could have the edge up on in-person protests, and I'm sure an argument could be made the other way as well.
The George Floyd movement, from, to your point, rose from social media.
Mm,
It happened from a teenager taking a video of, injustice, and a cop, placing his knee on the
right.
neck of George Floyd for almost 9 minutes. Like, and that sparked countrywide outrage, protests, rioting. And to that degree, you're right, because that spread through social media. The views of that got picked up by major news stations and sparked an enormous amount of change. So for
Mm,
that, you're right. But where did the change happen once that was posted to social media? It happened with people coming together and becoming large masses of people, even despite a pandemic going on, and marching in their various cities to protest change.
right.
And I think that that's where the in person aspect comes more about, because you could see and read all of these people talking about different actions that have occurred online.
Mm,
Like you could read people's reactions saying, "This is disgusting. I can't believe this would happen. This has been happening for far too long," which are all points that, I agree with. But at the same
yeah.
time, I don't think anyone is really trying to defend Derek Chauvin. Like, I think that that's pretty
No,
clear at
I
this
think
point.
everyone can
No
kind of
one's
agree
trying
on
to
that
defend
side.
his
Yeah.
actions. They're just trying to defend more police at this point, and that they don't want police to be defunded and such.
Do you think they're trying to
Which,
detract
I
from the
think,
argument in a way? Sorry to cut you off.
um like there are a bunch of different viewpoints on each side, because there are obviously people that are cops that care a lot about cops, and there, to everyone's point, there are good cops out there that are getting a bad name because of multiple tragic events that have occurred to the
Mm,
African American community. uh, I can understand the viewpoint of that, but the fact that all of these have happened and there has not been a significant change, and none of the deaths have necessarily pushed the needle as far as the George Floyd one has. I think at this point, the changes that you're witnessing and seeing countrywide are some of the best responses that I have seen, at least in my lifetime, when something tragic has happened between the African American community, and the police. I at least think that there is a significant amount of movement, which is great to see. But like was saying before, I think a lot of it is in person, and I think that even uh, the in person stuff is what makes people react and have like
Right.
such strong reactions to change, and I think it's what really sparks change rather than social media, because like you're not going to be someone could take a video of themselves in their house talking about how angry and pissed off they are about the thing, but when it's different doing that, and you can reach people from that, but I think that you actively participating with other people going up to government buildings and
Yes.
sites demanding change is kind of more provoking. And I think that doing that and exercising your First Amendment rights to be able to protest is in a way more effective. So for that reason, I think I still believe that doing anything in person for that reason is in fact more effective for sure.
Right. Well, I just wanted to take a
Yeah,
step forward as well here. I mean, like, I think you brought up a great point where you see everyone's reactions, and you have also celebrities going and sitting in rooms being like, "Y'all, this is messed up." Blah 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 blah. A lot of black athletes are stepping up to the plate.
yeah,
Like I know LeBron. A lot of actually a lot of black athletes, specifically in the NBA, I've seen have
and the
attended
NFL and
rallies.
the NFL
Yeah,
as
and the
well.
NFL.
Yeah,
But I'd say also taking it a step forward, right? All of these videos that we see from protests. Now, I wanted your also, I'll get into your take on this in a second, but to me, it seems like a lot of media that we get brought to us by mainstream big corporations can definitely be skewed, right?
yeah,
I'd say where we could get or have the best chance of getting some actual unbiased content would be through videos of, like you said, reactions to stuff that's happened at the protests. Like I remember, I'll use a recent example. It was a 70-year-old man that got pushed over, right? Like we saw that occur, and we also in turn got people's reactions to that. So it goes again like hand in hand. And I guess you could, in a way, like make it would just keep on going up and up and up and up. But yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I think I was just trying to play devil's advocate a little bit, but I think at
sure,
the end of the day, it really comes down to getting out there, getting because I'll be attending the Iona rally this Saturday.
yeah.
But it's really about just like getting out there more than anything.